For billionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein, his island was like heaven on earth. Unfortunately, for the rest of the residents, the island was more like hell. For years, there has been discourse on who was responsible for the sexual abuse and pedophilia that took place in Epstein Island, but the main answer always remains the same: Jeffrey Epstein. Nevertheless, the billionaire is undoubtedly not the only one at fault.
Jeffrey Epstein was born in Brooklyn in New York. He graduated from high school early and started out as a teacher at Dalton School in Manhattan. He taught some very rich kids and was surrounded by wealth. He met some very important people along the way, like Alan Greenberg, the CEO of Stearns Burn. He became a financial advisor to many of the company's wealthiest clients. He started his own company and only dealt with billionaires until he became a billionaire himself, but there was no doubt that his business was a little bit muddy.
Ghislaine Maxwell was Epstein's long-term romantic partner, as well as his partner in crime. Jeffrey was a very smart man. He knew people, he knew business. If he hadn't been smart, then he wouldn't have been able to do half of the things that he did. So, honestly, looking back now, I wish I had stayed in England, and I wish I had never met him. I think I would have been much happier had I moved on, but I wasn't successful at moving on. So that's, I guess, my greatest wish, that I had been more successful at moving on.
Epstein bought several islands: the St. Thomas in the U.S., Virgin Islands, Little St. James, and Great St. James. Here he committed numerous sex trafficking activities. This is also where most of his pedophilic acts occurred. Other locations for his crimes were his house in Florida and a ranch in New Mexico, when he intended to seed the human race with his DNA by inseminating more than 20 young women, as reported by an August 2019 article in the New York Times.
Now, we will discuss in more detail about his crimes and his death around 2019.
The list of individuals that had association with includes politicians from different countries, artists, scientists, journalists, and prominent business people, including members of the royal family. And among their possessions, there is an island in the Caribbean, houses or many mansions in New York, Florida, Paris, or New Mexico, and a Boeing 727 transformed into a private jet, where most of his sexual trafficking activities occurred.
The matter in question that everyone is wondering is whether his partner knew about all these crimes and the important people involved. People have been saying for years that I was involved and that I took part in it, but honestly I didn't. Back then I had no clue of what he was doing. I would never take part in such a thing. I just thought that he liked to throw parties and go to parties, and of course I never bothered to go to these parties because they have never really been my thing. And yes, I knew some important people, but I met them before I met Jeffrey, so that is no proof. No, I was never involved.
When one girl reported and posted a video on the internet, it was when more girls felt encouraged to do the same. After numerous complaints, the authorities were no longer able to overlook the matter, regardless of any bribes attempting to make them ignore it. So in 2019, Epstein was accused of recruiting, grooming, and ultimately abusing young minors, some as young as 14 years old from 1994 to 2004. However, 1 month after entering prison, the billionaire took his own life at the age of 66 in New York, jail where he was awaiting trial.
But was it really a suicide, or did many of his grooming friends want to shut him up forever?
There are many speculations about his death. However, after his death, all the harassed girls felt finally safe and the islands were closed, causing their colleagues to become too scared to suffer the same fate. Too much that they started to hide and abandon the business, this putting an end to his reign of terror.